6 years with Brenda, the thought hung in the air, tasting of old coffee and regret. It wasn't the kind of regret you could pinpoint to a single bad decision, but rather a slow, insidious seep, like water finding a crack in the foundation. Now looking back, the good memories felt brittle, like dried leaves ready to crumble underfoot, each one tainted by the ending I'd just been delivered. We met at the university library a late October afternoon during our final year. I was hunched over a stack of engineering textbooks, trying to make sense of something about fluid dynamics. Brenda, an architectural design student, moved with a certain focused urgency, always a little too fast for her own good. She was carrying a travel mug, the kind with a flimsy plastic lid, and when she tried to navigate around a stack of returned books, her elbow caught the cup. Dark, hot coffee splashed across my carefully organized notes for Professor Miller's calculus exam, blooming into an ugly stain on the crisp white pages. "Oh God, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice a low, husky apology. Her face flushed, a blush that made the freckles across her nose stand out. I remember the smell of hazelnut, strong and sweet. We spent the next hour trying to blot the damage, her offering a half-eaten granola bar by way of further apology. We talked about classes, our plans for after graduation. She had an ambitious streak, a drive to leave her mark, which I found compelling. She made me laugh with a dry, quick wit that mirrored my own. We just clicked, right there amongst the smell of old paper and stale coffee, and from that day on, we were inseparable. 4 years later, I planned the proposal down to the last detail. It was late August, the air still thick with summer heat, but with a hint of autumn crispness just starting to creep in. We drove out to the bluffs overlooking Lake Michigan, our favorite spot. The sun was dipping, painting the sky in fiery oranges and deep purples, just like in the picture I'd saved on my phone. Brenda's best friend Marla was hiding in the trees with her camera, though Brenda didn't know it. Marla and I had rehearsed it twice, making sure she'd be ready the moment I knelt. I pulled the small velvet box from my pocket, the ring glinting under the fading light. My heart hammered against my ribs, a dull thud. "Brenda," I started, the words catching in my throat. "I can't imagine a life without you." She looked at me, a soft smile on her face. Then her eyes widened as she saw the ring. Tears welled up, spilling freely down her cheeks as I asked her to marry me. "Yes," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "1,000 times yes." She hugged me tight, her face buried in my shoulder, and for a moment the entire world narrowed down to just us, bathed in the last light of a perfect Midwestern sunset. I believed, truly believed, that this was our forever. The next 2 years were a whirlwind of spreadsheets and floor plans, wedding magazines piled up on our coffee table, dog-eared and marked with sticky notes. We spent Saturdays touring open houses, imagining our lives within their walls. We talked about paint colors and mortgage rates, guest lists and catering options. There were minor disagreements, of course. She wanted a big wedding, 150 people at a fancy venue. I preferred something smaller, more intimate, maybe 50 guests at a renovated barn. We talked it through, found a middle ground, 100 guests at a nice restaurant with a private event space. Same with the house. She wanted to buy right away, eager to start nesting. I thought it prudent to save a bit more, to weather any market fluctuations. We compromised, put a larger down payment on a smaller starter home, figuring we'd upgrade in 5 years. We were good at finding middle ground, at least until we weren't. Word count 808, part 26. 5 weeks ago, a Tuesday morning started like any other, with Brenda preparing oats in the kitchen. Dale made coffee using the matching mugs Brenda's sister Jenny had given them. Brenda seemed unusually distracted, her attention frequently drawn to her phone. Her behavior created a subtle tension in the otherwise routine morning. Finally, Brenda broke the silence, her voice holding an unsettling edge as she needed to talk. Dale attempted to keep his tone light, asking her what was on her mind. Brenda then announced a sudden trip to Europe with her university friends, crediting Shauna for finding the deals. Dale felt an immediate sense of unease, knowing Shanna often led Brenda into spontaneous, sometimes questionable plans. Despite his misgivings, Dale tried to sound supportive, inquiring about the timing of the trip. Brenda's casual reply, "Next week, nearly caused Dale to spill his hot coffee. She rationalized the trip as a unique, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, emphasizing that perfect timing never exists. In retrospect, Dale recognized the suddenness, the urgency, and the covert planning as significant red flags. The following week was a flurry of activity, with Brenda exhibiting an almost manic excitement. She spent hours on video calls and shopping, while Dale helped, increasingly feeling disconnected from their impending wedding plans. 5 weeks ago, a Tuesday morning unfolded with the practiced ease of habit. The smell of cinnamon and brown sugar already filled the kitchen, Brenda at the stove stirring a pot of oats. I was by the coffee maker, grinding beans, the whirring sound a familiar start to the day. We used the matching ceramic mugs Jenny, Brenda's sister, had given us last Christmas, heavy and speckled brown. It was the kind of ordinary domestic scene you almost take for granted. But even then, something was off. Brenda kept glancing at her phone, tucked just beside the oat box. Not casual glances, but quick, furtive peeks, her brow furrowed slightly. She'd stir, then check, then stir again. The usual morning banter, the quiet planning for the day ahead, didn't materialize. The air between us, normally comfortable, felt thin, stretched. She finally set the spoon down, the clink against the pot sounding louder than it should have. Her voice was lower than usual, almost hesitant. "Dale," she said, looking not quite at me, but at the counter beside my elbow. "I need to tell you something." The words themselves weren't alarming, but the way she said them, a flat tone that held a tremor of something I couldn't quite place, made the small hairs on my arms prickle. I tried to keep my own voice even, casual, though a knot was already tightening in my stomach. "What's up, babe?" I asked, pouring the dark coffee into our mugs. The steam curled, carrying the robust smell of Colombian roast. She took a breath, a short, sharp intake of air. "I'm going to Europe next week. It's a last-minute thing. Shauna found these incredible deals on flights and accommodations, and it's with some of the old university crew." She spoke quickly, as if trying to get ahead of any questions, any objections. An immediate unease settled over me. Shauna, Brenda's friend from freshman year, the one who always seemed to push the boundaries. The wild card who convinced Brenda to get that spontaneous tattoo of a tiny crescent moon on her ankle after a particularly brutal midterm. Shauna's incredible deals usually came with a price beyond money. I felt a cold prickle of apprehension, a quiet warning in my gut. Despite that internal alarm, I pushed it down, forcing a smile. "Europe sounds amazing," I said, trying to sound genuinely enthusiastic. "When are you thinking of going?" I knew, even as I asked, that the answer would be sooner than made sense. "Next week," she repeated, almost mirroring my thought. The casualness of her delivery almost made me spill my coffee, a hot splash threatening to scald my hand. "It just came up. Shauna's got it all booked, a week and a half. London, then Paris, a couple of days in Rome. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, you know? And the timing's never perfect for these things." Her eyes met mine then, wide and earnest, but also, I thought, a little defensive. In hindsight, the red flags were waving like brightly colored banners. The suddenness of it, the urgency, the fact that all this planning had happened completely behind my back, only revealed when everything was finalized. It wasn't just a trip, it was a decision already made, presented as a fait accompli. The week that followed was a blur of frantic preparations. Brenda seemed almost manic with excitement, a nervous energy humming beneath her skin. Our small apartment became a staging ground for a European adventure. She spent hours on video calls with Shauna and the others, sketching out itineraries, discussing train schedules, and debating which obscure museum in Paris was a must-see. Shopping bags filled with new travel clothes appeared, piled in the corner of our bedroom. She researched obscure cafes and debated the merits of different travel apps. I helped where I could, carrying bags, looking up train times, my own thoughts, a steady thrum of unease beneath the surface. Each excited chatter about London or Paris felt like another brick in a wall between us, slowly, quietly, being built. The looming wedding, just 3 months away, started to feel not like a celebration of our future, but a distant, increasingly irrelevant detail. Word count 879, part 36. The morning of Brenda's departure dawned, casting an unsettling quiet over their apartment. Dale helped with her luggage, observing her distant, almost detached behavior, which he initially attributed to travel anxiety. He couldn't help but notice her beauty, even in her simple, practical travel attire. The drive to the airport was largely silent, punctuated only by a melancholic love song on the radio. Brenda occasionally smiled at her phone, her attention elsewhere, further isolating Dale. Upon arrival, Dale insisted on assisting her with her bags all the way to the security checkpoint. In the security line, Brenda turned to him, her expression a strange mix of resolute determination and an emotion Dale couldn't identify. "I think we need to take a break," she stated, her words delivered with the same casualness as a weather report. Dale froze, his mind struggling to comprehend the sudden declaration, asking for clarification. Brenda was already moving, her expensive new luggage rolling effortlessly behind her as she continued to speak. "I just need some time to think," she called back, her voice already receding. She added, "some space to clear my head," before disappearing into the bustling crowd of travelers. Dale remained rooted, watching the empty space where she had vanished, her words echoing endlessly in his mind. The drive home was perilous, his vision blurred by unshed tears, his hands trembling uncontrollably. He had to pull over twice, overwhelmed by nausea, vomiting by the roadside, and screaming into the desolate landscape. Upon returning to their apartment, Dale immediately tried calling Brenda, Monium, only to find his number blocked. He attempted to reach her via text, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, discovering he had been blocked on all platforms. It felt as though she had meticulously erased him from every aspect of her digital existence. The morning Brenda left, the apartment felt unnaturally quiet. The usual clatter of breakfast, the soft murmur of the news, everything was muted. Her carry-on and a new, expensive-looking checked bag sat by the door, sleek and black. I helped her with them, the weight of the suitcases oddly comforting compared to the growing lightness in her eyes. She seemed distant, almost detached, as if her mind was already halfway across the Atlantic. I told myself it was just pre-travel anxiety, that she always got like this before a big trip. Even in her simple dark jeans and a plain gray long-sleeve top, she looked beautiful. Her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, ready for the long flight. The drive to the airport was mostly silent. The radio played some forgettable love song, the kind that usually made us both roll our eyes. Brenda, though, was oblivious, occasionally smiling at something on her phone. I tried to catch her eye in the rearview mirror to connect, but she was absorbed in whatever messages were scrolling across her screen. The silence felt heavy, suffocating. I pulled up to the departures curb, but insisted on parking and walking her inside. "No, I'm coming in," I said, grabbing her bags from the trunk. "It's fine, I want to." It felt important, a last stand against the growing chasm. We navigated the bustling terminal, the air thick with hurried goodbyes and the drone of announcements. We reached the security line, a winding snake of people with their shoes off and laptops out. She turned to me then, her face a mask I didn't recognize. There was a hard edge to her jaw, a glint in her eyes, determination maybe, mixed with something cold and unfamiliar. "I think we need to take a break," she said, her voice flat, as casual as commenting on the weather. No preamble, no softening, just those words delivered with a precision that felt surgical. My mind didn't process it. The sounds of the airport, the chatter, the security guards calling instructions, all faded to a dull roar. "What do you mean a break?" I managed, the words tasting like ash. My hand, still on the handle of her expensive new luggage, froze. She was already moving, her bag rolling smoothly behind her as the line inched forward. She didn't look back, just tossed the words over her shoulder like an afterthought. "I just need some time to think," she called, her voice already fading into the general din. "Some space to clear my head." And then she was gone, swallowed by the crowd of anonymous travelers, a flicker of dark hair, a flash of her gray top, and then nothing. I stood there, a lone, fixed point in a swirling eddy of movement, watching the empty space where she had vanished. Her words replayed in my head, a loop of meaningless syllables that hammered against my skull. A break. Time to think. Space to clear my head. Each phrase a dull knife twist. The drive home was dangerous, my vision blurred, tears I couldn't stop streaming down my face, making the road ahead a shimmering, distorted mess. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, knuckles white. The ordinary highway, usually a familiar commute, felt like a treacherous, unfamiliar path. Twice I had to pull over, my stomach heaving. I stumbled out of the car, vomiting into the ditch, the sour taste burning my throat. Between gasps, I screamed, a raw, primal sound that tore from my chest, unheard by anyone but the rustling cornfields. When I finally made it back to our apartment, the quiet felt like a physical presence, mocking me. I grabbed my phone, fingers shaking as I scrolled to her contact. I pressed call. Busy signal. I tried again. Same. A quick check of my phone settings confirmed it. Blocked. I tried texting. Message failed. Then Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Every single platform, every avenue of communication was sealed off. It was as if she'd surgically excised me from her digital life, leaving no trace, no way to reach her. Word, count, 887 part 46. The initial days following Brenda's departure were insufferable. Dale barely managed to sleep or eat. He wandered through their apartment like a wraith, each object a painful reminder of their shared future. Brenda's yoga mat, the stack of wedding magazines all mocked the plans they had meticulously laid. Friends began to reach out, confused by Brenda's sudden silence across all social media platforms. Dale, however, had no explanation, no answers to offer them or himself. Marla, Brenda's best friend, expressed concern, but Dale perceived an unsettling, rehearsed quality to her worry. 5 days into this suffocating silence, Dale sat at the dining table staring blankly at their wedding binder. Suddenly, a painful clarity struck him with the force of a thunderbolt. This wasn't just a break, this was a betrayal, he realized, understanding that she hadn't merely paused, but had decisively ended things. He recognized that she had run, systematically burning every bridge between them. He pulled out his phone, his fingers steadying as he began to make the necessary calls. "Hello, Riverside Gardens. This is Dale Peterson. I need to cancel a wedding booking for March 15th, he stated. He proceeded to systematically contact the elegant catering company and creative floral designers, canceling all prior arrangements. Each cancellation call was a gut-wrenching experience, yet a vital step toward his own healing. He knew it meant losing significant deposits, but the cost felt irrelevant compared to the alternative. Dale later rationalized these losses as money well spent, purchasing his freedom from a woman capable of vanishing without a single word. The first few days after Brenda left were a blur of sleepless nights and uneaten meals. The apartment, once a space filled with our shared life, felt like a museum of a future that would never be. Her yoga mat, still rolled up in the corner of the living room, mocked me with its silent presence. The stack of wedding magazines on the coffee table, their glossy pages filled with smiling couples and elaborate cakes, felt like a cruel joke. I moved through the rooms like a ghost, touching her thing, a scarf draped over a chair, a half-used bottle of lotion on the dresser, trying to conjure her back, but finding only absence. My own reflection in the bathroom mirror was a stranger, hollow-eyed and gaunt. Friends started to reach out, confused. "Hey, have you heard from Brenda? She's gone totally dark on Insta," my buddy Mark texted. Another friend, Sarah, called. "Is Brenda okay? She usually posts everything." I had no answers, just mumbled something vague about her needing a digital detox on her trip. The lies felt like acid in my throat. Marla called too, her voice pitched with what sounded like concern. "Dale, I'm worried about Brenda. She hasn't responded to any of my texts. Is she all right?" I told her Brenda was fine, just taking a break from her phone. But as she spoke, something in her tone felt off, rehearsed, like she was reading lines from a script. A tiny, insidious seed of doubt about Marla began to sprout in the back of my mind, quickly overshadowed by the larger, crushing weight of Brenda's silence. 5 days into that silence, I found myself sitting at the dining table, staring at the thick, cream-colored wedding binder. It lay open to a page with swatches of fabric for tablecloths and a handwritten note about peony season. The details, once so important, now seemed utterly meaningless. And then, it hit me. Not like a dawning realization, but like a thunderbolt, brutal and undeniable. This wasn't just a break. This wasn't time to think. This was a betrayal. She hadn't just stepped away, she had run. She had burned every bridge, meticulously and deliberately, before she even told me she was leaving. The casualness of her goodbye at the airport, the surgical precision of the digital blockades, it all clicked into place, she knew. She had planned this. A cold, hard clarity settled over me, pushing aside the fog of confusion and pain. I pulled out my phone, my fingers no longer shaking. There was a grim resolve now, a steeliness that had replaced the desperate sadness. "Hello, Riverside Gardens," I said, my voice steady, though it felt distant, not quite my own. "This is Dale Peterson. I need to cancel a wedding booking for March 15th. "Yes, that's right, the whole thing." The voice on the other end was sympathetic, asking if everything was okay. I just said, "No, it's not," and listened to her explain the cancellation policy. A portion of the deposit was non-refundable. I told her I understood. Next was the elegant catering company, known for their artisanal cheese boards and sustainable practices. "Yes, I need to cancel our wedding reception for March 15th. Another sympathetic voice, another lost deposit. Then Creative Florals, the owner, Mrs. Albright, who had spent an hour with Brenda debating the exact shade of ivory roses. "I'm sorry, Mr. Peterson," she said gently. "We've already ordered some of the specialized blooms. There will be a cancellation fee." Each call was a fresh wound, a verbal amputation of a part of my future. The cost was substantial, a good chunk of our savings gone, but each canceled felt like a small, painful liberation. Later, I'd rationalize it as money well spent. It bought my freedom. Freedom from a woman who could simply vanish without a word, leaving me to pick up the pieces of a life she'd carefully dismantled. Word count 884, part 5-6. The subsequent weeks merged into a steady, almost numb routine of work. Dale buried himself in extra projects at the office, filling the hours once reserved for wedding plans. His friends rallied around him, offering quiet, unwavering support during this difficult period. Gary, in particular, frequently appeared with takeout, providing a sympathetic ear without pushing. He understood Dale's need for silence, always ready to listen if Dale chose to speak. Exactly 5 weeks after Brenda had walked away, Dale's phone rang, displaying an unknown number. "Dale?" Brenda's voice, achingly familiar, echoed through the phone, a ghost from a past life. "I'll be back on Thursday morning. Flight lands at 10:30. Can you pick me up?" she asked, her tone casually presumptive. Her assumption ignited a hardened resolve within Dale, firm and unyielding. "What's that got to do with me?" Dale replied, his voice surprisingly steady, despite his trembling hands. A heavy, deafening silence stretched across the phone line, thick with unspoken questions. When Brenda finally spoke again, her voice was small, edged with uncertainty. "Dale, please, we need to talk about this." "No," Dale stated firmly, his resolve solidifying. "We really don't. You had 5 weeks to talk. You chose silence instead." He ended the call abruptly, then blocked her number, mirroring her own actions from weeks prior. Dale knew with a chilling certainty that it was time to let everyone know the truth of what had happened. The weeks that followed Brenda's departure blurred into an indistinct routine of work. My apartment became a place to simply sleep, and sometimes to eat. I threw myself into extra projects at the software firm, volunteering for every late-night debugging session, every weekend deployment. The long hours at my desk, the quiet hum of the servers, filled the empty spaces that had once been dedicated to wedding planning, house dreams, and quiet evenings with Brenda. The relentless focus on code and deadlines was a welcome distraction, a way to keep the swirling chaos in my head at bay. My friends, without really needing to be told much, circled around me. They didn't ask a lot of questions, which I appreciated. Gary especially was a constant, low-key presence. He'd just show up sometimes, a greasy pizza box in one hand, a 6-pack of Midwestern lager in the other. He'd leave the pizza on the counter, grab a couple of beers, and just sit on the sofa, watching a game on TV. We wouldn't always talk, but his presence was a solid comfort, a silent anchor in a world that had suddenly felt untethered. He never pushed me to talk, but I knew with the quiet certainty of old friendship that he was ready to listen if I ever decided to open up. He just sat there eating pizza, occasionally grunting at a bad call, letting me exist in my own pain, without judgment or expectation. The quiet dedication of those weeks, spent meticulously undoing what Brenda had so casually discarded, showed me the true cost of her choices. It made me wonder, too, what other ripple effects her actions had set in motion. Stick around to the end to see how life's costly choices unfold. Exactly 5 weeks after Brenda had walked away from me at the airport, my phone rang. The screen displayed unknown number. My heart gave a lurch, a sudden, unpleasant jolt. I almost didn't answer, but a strange, grim curiosity made me swipe to connect. Dale? Her voice. It was achingly familiar, a ghost from the past, though it sounded a little thinner, perhaps a bit tired. My hand, despite my best efforts, began to tremble. I didn't say anything, just listened to the faint static on the line, the distant murmur that meant she was likely still abroad. Dale, it's Brenda. I'll be back on Thursday morning. Flight lands at 10:30 at O'Hare. Can you pick me up? She asked, her tone casual, almost presumptive, as if 5 weeks of absolute calculated silence hadn't happened, as if she hadn't systematically erased me from her life. The sheer audacity of her request ignited something hard and cold within me, like flint striking steel. My voice, surprisingly, was steady. What's that got to do with me? I replied, the words clipped and devoid of emotion, though my hands were shaking so hard I had to grip the phone tightly. A deafening silence hung on the line, a vacuum where her casual presumption had been. I could almost hear her processing my words, the unexpected rejection. When she finally spoke again, her voice was small, uncertain, a stark contrast to the breezy confidence of moments before. Dale, please, we need to talk about this. No, I stated firmly, my resolve hardening into a solid, unyielding block. We really don't. You had 5 weeks to talk, Brenda. You chose silence instead. I didn't wait for her to reply. I ended the call. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, I went into my phone's settings, found her number in the call history, and blocked it, just as she had blocked me. The symmetry of it was chilling but satisfying. I stood there for a moment, the phone still in my hand, the quiet apartment now feeling less empty, more like a clean slate. It was time. It was time to let everyone know the truth. Word count 885, part 66. Dale opened their shared group chat, originally set up for wedding updates, and composed a straightforward message. He informed everyone that the wedding was off, along with his relationship with Brenda. He also confirmed that all vendors had been notified and deposits were handled. His phone immediately erupted with a barrage of messages, calls, and notifications. The responses were a mix of shock, unwavering support, and demands for further explanations. Dale, maintaining his composure, provided the facts without any embellishment or emotional overlay. He explained that Brenda had asked for a break, blocked him, and then disappeared for 5 weeks. Jenny, Brenda's sister, was the first of her family to respond, her message laced with accusation. How could you make such a huge decision without talking to Brenda first? This isn't like you, Dale, Jenny wrote. Dale found himself laughing at the bitter irony of her words. Funny, he replied. I could say the same about Brenda deciding to take a break without talking to me first. By early afternoon, Brenda finally broke her silence within the group chat. She pleaded, Dale, please, can we talk about this privately? There's so much I need to explain. Dale, however, had reached his limit and had nothing left to say to her. With Brenda's voice still echoing in my memory, the phone still warm in my hand from blocking her number, a different kind of calm settled over me. It wasn't peace, not exactly, but a cold, clear determination. The time for private pain was over. This was no longer just between Brenda and me. I opened our shared group chat, the one Gary had originally set up years ago as a casual planning space for our wedding. It was filled with old messages about tasting menus, floral arrangements, and honeymoon ideas. My fingers, surprisingly steady, typed out a simple message. Hey everyone, I began, the words feeling stark and definitive. Just wanted to let you know that the wedding is off, and so is my relationship with Brenda. All vendors have been notified and deposits handled. Thanks for your understanding. I hit send. For a few moments, silence. Then my phone exploded. Messages started pouring in, a vibrating, dinging, lighting up the screen. Calls came through one after another, from friends, from cousins, from people I hadn't heard from in months. It was a cacophony of digital reactions: shock, disbelief, heartfelt support, and a good deal of confused demands for explanations. My responses were brief, factual, without embellishment. Brenda asked for a break at the airport, I typed repeatedly, or explained over the phone. Blocked me on everything. Disappeared for 5 weeks. She called just now asking for a ride from the airport. I didn't add any accusations, any bitterness, just the facts, laid out cold and plain. I wanted no room for misinterpretation, no space for anyone to fill in their own sympathetic narrative for her. Brenda's family friends started to chime in, some expressing sadness, others outright confusion. Then Jenny, Brenda's older sister, a woman I'd always respected for her practicality and level head, sent a private message. It was dripping with accusation, a protective fury on behalf of her sister that stung. How could you make such a huge decision without talking to Brenda first? This isn't like you, Dale. You're throwing everything away over a trip. I couldn't help but let out a bitter, humorless laugh. The irony of it was a sharp physical pain. Funny, I typed back, the screen glaring. I could say the same about Brenda deciding to take a break without talking to me first, then blocking me for 5 weeks, or planning a European trip behind my back. Don't worry, Jenny, everything was already thrown away before I made any calls. I didn't wait for her response. By early afternoon, the group chat was a furious whirlwind of speculation and concern. The truth, in its raw, unadorned state, had shaken everyone. People were exchanging private messages, calling each other, trying to make sense of the sudden, brutal end to what they'd all seen as a perfectly stable, loving relationship. Then a new message from Brenda appeared in the chat, her name appearing after 5 weeks of digital silence. Dale, please, can we talk about this privately? There's so much I need to explain. I stared at the words for a long moment. My finger hovered over the keyboard, but nothing came. There was no anger left, no sadness, no desire for an explanation. The well had run dry. There was nothing left to say to her. Word count 807, the end. Conclusion, the apartment, now truly mine again, felt lighter. The lingering ghost of Brenda, of the future we'd planned, had finally begun to dissipate, replaced by a quiet sense of my own presence. I walked through the familiar rooms, no longer haunted by every object, but rather seeing them as simple possessions. The wedding magazines were gone, tossed in the recycling bin. Her yoga mat was no longer a silent accusation, but just an empty space where one used to be. My phone still buzzed occasionally with messages from friends checking in, or from distant relatives who were just now catching wind of the news. I answered them honestly, factually, leaving no room for speculation or pity. There was no anger left, just a hollowed-out certainty. Brenda had made her choice, and I had made mine. The future, once so clearly mapped out, was now a blank page, intimidating yet also, in a strange way, exhilarating. It wasn't the future I'd envisioned, but it was mine, unburdened by false promises or silent betrayals. The quiet hum of my own life, rebuilding itself piece by piece, was the only soundtrack I needed. The end.